Well, welcome everybody. My name is Kendra Smith and I'm the Director of Environmental Stewardship. Thank you all for coming today. I've got a team of people here. Are we doing an opening introduction or yes? Okay, I'll just point out we've got Tyler Davis here, who's the project manager on this project, and he is handling the online crew. I think there's 8 people online. We also have Susan Heshelman in the back. She does GIS and mapping. And Angela Broderick works in our climate and sustainability program. So she's been working in the comp plan update and tuned in the sea level rise and all things. And then we have our lovely consultants. Rachel and Andrea, they're going to do maybe more formal introductions as well. I was tasked with setting the stage about what the meeting is today. For some of you, you participated in the last meeting. We really kind of covered the basics of what's going on with regard to sea level rise. The second sessions are really about talking through a sample or an example site. We have multiple sites throughout the counties. We just picked an assortment of different scenarios. So for Lopez, we picked the Fort Stanley site. So a lagoon on the back, so it's a low elevation site, lagoon on the back, shoreline on the front, road in between. You know, we have other sites where we have a bluff and there's houses. So it's different for different islands, but we're happy to talk with any of you. If you have a bluff or something else on your site, we can kind of chat through the different scenarios that we're dealing with. And really the goal here and through this project is to just start a conversation. The information you'll see in the walkthrough is just kind of scenarios from like, if we did nothing, to restore the whole thing, to armor and try to hold the road in its place. We give the full spectrum. But remember that from our perspective, like there's a lot of factors that come into play here. There's a temporal, like we're not sure how long before this is really gonna be a big problem. It might be a bigger problem on one site than it is on another over time. So we're just gonna have to kind of watch it and adapt to it. Spatially, there might be some homes that are might be in more trouble sooner than later. There's issues of septic systems and other things that all need consideration. And this is really to just open the discussion. We have no plans to come up with some critical design tomorrow. We just want to understand and really start the conversation about what we need to do as a community and what you and your heirs and future generations are going to be needing to address. So I think with that, I'll turn it over to Rachel. Yeah, oh yes, where's Jane? Did you want to say hi? Jane
Fuller sat on County Council member for District 3, Ms. Lopez, and yeah, happy to be with you all tonight for workshop number 2. I couldn't stay for the full first one because I had another meeting to go to the village, but I heard it went very well. So I'm very pleased to have the consultants back to talk nuts and bolts about our location. And yeah, I'm just really interested in how this workshop number 2 goes and what comes out of it. Really delighted that you all chose to take the time to come tonight and continue the conversation. And I will be going to Shaw Island tomorrow to do this again. In that case, in the instance of Shaw, we'll be talking about Guam Bay Road, which is a great concern to them. What this is helping also the county to take stock of is where in any of this lies, county intervention when it comes to compromising infrastructure. And then on the other side of that, when it comes to ensuring restoration where that is possible. So the county's involvement in this is it definitely has guardrails. It's in all kinds of ways, and so this is a very valuable exploratory discussion. So, but thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks all for being here. We're going to just share a little bit of background to make sure we're all on the same page. And then the focus for today will be spending time in that room, actually walking around, looking at maps, talking with each other, asking questions. And then the second half of the workshop, we'll have a full group discussion here. So very interactive, but want to just put us all on the same page to start. So yeah, a little bit of an agenda. So we'll have a quick break in the middle as well for you to get up, use the restroom, grab a snack, get some water, talk with a neighbor. So yeah, just some logistics, 2 hours. Hopefully y'all know where the restrooms are. We have a sign-in sheet that we'll ask if y'all can fill out as you go into that room. And we do have folks who are joining virtually as well, so hybrid format. As Kendra mentioned, really the goal here is to explore adaptation options for shoreline roads across the county. Here we picked Port Stanley Road as an example. We're going to present 3 different conceptual strategies. We want your feedback. We want to hear what your questions are, what your concerns are, what your values are, and then really use that to support discussion for continued conversation. And again, thanks all for taking time out of your night to be here, just ask, but this is a space for listening, this is a space for asking questions, and being respectful of everyone's time and viewpoints here today. Yeah, so as mentioned, we had a first workshop that I see many familiar faces from earlier this fall. There's a lot of text on here, just to highlight a couple takeaways from that. We know the coastline is changing. We've seen that this week. We'll have king tides. So that is the time when we really see some of that change. Higher water levels, increased erosion, more waves, potentially more damage. And sea level rise and erosion threaten a lot of things. Our roads, utilities, septic systems, homes, and natural resources. So really trying to start the conversation around how do we adapt with Port Stanley Road as an example. And recognizing that this is a community responsibility and a community conversation. And there are many different strategies we have, and each kind of has different benefits and trade-offs, and it's important to be aware of what those are when thinking through those. But no matter what, acting early, starting the conversation early gives us more options than if we wait and have to react. So yeah, many roads in the county are in a similar situation. These are the 4 roads that we're highlighting with these series of workshops. So tomorrow we'll be on Shaw Island, looking at Blind Bay Road. Tomorrow night we'll be at Lopez Island, looking at Deer Harbor Road. And then on Thursday night we'll be on Stanley Island, looking at False Bay Road. Each has different challenges with erosion and with flooding. So the 3 strategies that we're looking at tonight for Port Stanley Road are kind of each, as Kendra mentioned, a bit of a kind of distinct scenario, but realize that there could be many chances where these could be kind of mixed together. It's not necessarily one or the other. It could be a combination of strategies over time or a combination of strategies in one location. So the first kind of strategy is what we call no management, and that is you let nature take its course. And maybe we clean debris, we do a little bit of maintenance, but mostly that's letting nature take its course and allow the road to degrade over time. The second strategy would be protect the road. So try to keep the road in its current location and do that by elevating the road, by adding short. Try to hold that in place as long as we can, realizing that at some point water levels are going to be high enough that is probably not a feasible strategy. And then the third one would be realign and restore, which would be relocating or removing sections of road and restoring the shoreline as kind of a very long-term scenario of trying to get out of the way of the water. So just some examples of that, because I feel like it's helpful to have visuals. This is, in Washington, examples of you kind of let nature take its course. Maybe the road is inaccessible at certain times of the year when you have a king tide, when you have higher water, can be pretty disruptive. And eventually we know that that road would kind of start to degrade as there's more wave activity. An example of protecting that, this is extreme from New Zealand, but you put armor, you build it up high, you add rocks, a very kind of engineered strategy. Another version here for realign and restore, this is an example from Canada. You can kind of see on the left here, a road that was armored, and then on the right, that was removed, and that was turned into a beach area. Or a more dramatic version, kind of like that. And it looks like they have a walking trail or a bike trail there. So each of these strategies, there are going to be impacts that are common to all of them. So for homes, in the case of Fort Stanley Road, there's water from both sides. We have water from the ocean, we have water from the wetland and groundwater. So for homes in that area for long-term resilience, that could mean that the homes that need to be elevated or look at being in a different location in the long term. And then for septic systems don't play well with flooding. So, as we have higher groundwater levels and more flooding, that could impact the function of the septic system. And so in the longer term, for long-term resilience, that could require relocating those septic systems to a spot where they're not going to flood. And then impacts the habitat can vary across strategies. So as I mentioned, it could require using a combination of strategies together over time or in different sections. And a way to think about that is kind of short-term, mid-term, long-term, how you could pair those together. So before we get into the activity, I'm going to pass it to Andrea to provide a little bit more detail about Fort Stanley Road, what some of the vulnerabilities are, and what each of those strategies look like.
Okay, well, I can start with first everything you can see if it shows up. That's actually working. You can guys see that pointer there. So here we are, Fort Stanley. Obviously a very low elevation road. So its current condition, as you can see from this image, is very low with obviously water on both sides. It's roughly 11 feet in elevation, so it is regularly overtopped or gets wet, particularly during king tides and high water events, like when we have a storm surge. It is entirely located within the FEMA flood zone, so within that 100-year flood zone. Generally, it is on a barrier beach, which is a beach that naturally kind of moves and gets overtopped. That's kind of part of the self-sustaining nature of that type of beach. And the landward lagoon is currently controlled. The water levels are controlled within it, use it with the tide gauge. And that is located, I guess it's just a little bit this way. This photo, unfortunately.
An attempt is made to control it.
Yeah, it attempts to control it. Yeah, it's in a somewhat questionable condition and definitely with regard to sea level rise. So when we look at the future of Fort Stanley Road, it's likely to be overtopped more frequently during more frequent high water events. So you're also likely to see higher water levels within the lagoon as a result of that, because I guess Rachel said there's also groundwater feeding the water level within the lagoon. So as the road overtopping occurs with greater frequency, that will result in the road prism kind of being compromised, starting to crumble, cracks, sometimes water flowing underneath it, and increasing frequency of flooding of the homes and septic drain fields and septic tanks. So ultimately, the no action alternative does include continued degradation of the road.
A quick question.
Yeah.
What was it like before the road was there? Did they fill it and then build the road, or did they just put it on top of the line, or what did they do?
In many cases, like the roads were placed in the back shore or the super tidal, so areas where you would have seen like dune grass growing. It would have likely been sandy along that area, sand on either side. There isn't a lot of fill, which you can tell just based on like the elevation of the road, it's quite low. Like I said, it's only 11 feet, which is very. But our mean high is 7 feet. So it's, you know, it's very close to mean high. And so you have a storm surge of 3 feet during a big storm.
Just a little background. At one time, back in the 1800s, the river was quite deep. It had direct access to the sound before the tidal reefs and all that stuff was put in. We brought boats in back there and set them over winter so that
It wasn't,
articles and everything died.
it was a back thing, not a lagoon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's been considerable filling within the lagoon and the adjacent wetlands. So historically, it would have had a much larger tidal prism, the volume of water, and it would have sustained a much larger tide channel. It probably was much more dynamic and moved over time, across that area. So-
Yes.
Oh, yeah, and there's some great historical imagery at the museum as well as on the NOAA website. If you look up the historical maps, you can see some great legends.
Good question. If you're 11 feet from the zero, what's the data?
Oh, 11 feet, NAVD 88. NAVD 88. It's a North American vertical data. And I could get you that elevation. Yeah. So this is a map showing the inundation. All of the area shown in blue hatching is the FEMA flood zone, so that's already the area that's inundated within the, when there's a storm surge combined with a high tide. So this is, if there's a bit of a storm surge, this, at the end of the week, going along with our kidney times, this is easily the water level that you'd be seeing. As we look at sea level rise, or as sea level rise begins to occur, you can see the added darker blue around the cross section. That is the 2 feet of sea level rise. And then those orangey reds are showing 5 feet of sea level rise. We call that a 1-year flood, so kind of a more regular occurrence, and then the 100-year floods. So
What's the time frame on these models? How far in the future are we projecting here?
There's a lot of uncertainty for when they occur, or when this will occur, because sea level rise is anticipated to accelerate considerably beyond 2050. There's much more certainty in what we're likely to see between now and 2050, and that's somewhere. So
Yeah.
Let me just say it a little more clarity. So between 2050 and 2100, it's very likely to be about 2 feet of sea level rise. Beyond 2100, there's much more uncertainty. It could be up to 5.
And the 2 feet and the 5 feet are relative to a baseline of about 2000. So some of the rise has already happened in the past 25 years. So 2 feet is more like 2050s-ish, and 5 feet is closer to the end of century.
So when we're looking at this no management strategy, we're looking at this scenario with this level of inundation.
What would you do with the tide gate with no management? Would it continue to be maintained?
It would be overtopped, so it would really lose its functionality entirely. More questions?
Well, we heard that the tide gate used to be further along. Is that true? That there previously was a tide gate?
I don't know of it being moved to a different location.
I know that it has incurred some upgrades in recent years.
It's actually been degraded. And, you know, with the scenarios back in 2000, lagoon restoration, they mentioned the size of the tide gate. And, they degraded that fairly significantly when they lined it. Because no longer is there this big a tide gate, it's not smaller, so less water comes out of the lagoon at low tide. That was,
So it's reduced.
yeah, it doesn't empty completely, I believe, like it should.
And if I heard your question completely. Back in the 19th century, the outlet wasn't there,
Now it was the stream, right, on the far.
but it was to the west end of the.
Okay, yeah, that's what we heard.
Right, my property.
So it wasn't, yeah, it was just, it was.
So it's a little bit further north.
A lot.
Yeah.
It was way more.
Yeah, that makes sense, because there appears to be kind of more of an delta there too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so with no management, the impacts to the road will entail, additional maintenance and debris removal will be required with much greater frequency. The road will be scoured out from underneath and likely crumble. The road will become less functional and eventually be destroyed and would essentially require replacement. There could also be additional impacts to the homes from increase in flooding from both the ocean and the groundwater, so both from the lagoon side and the ocean side. And be vulnerable, those homes would be vulnerable to battering by driftwood, which is very destructive. And so a lot of those houses in the long term will likely require elevation or relocation. So there will also be impacts to the septic systems and that do not function well when they're being regularly inundated, as all these impacted. So there are, potential locations where the septic could be relocated or transitioned to community septic. There also would be impacts to habitats to maintain the road. The lagoon is likely to become more marine over time. And the tidal flow will continue to be constrained until it is fully overtopped. But obviously fish don't do well swimming over the road, so that doesn't exactly entail any restoration of that fish habitat within the lagoon, and the impacts to the water quality from flooded septics would be a major issue as well. So the next strategy that we looked at is protecting the road by building it up in elevation, so it's above the that regularly flooded elevation with sea level rise. So both from the 100-year flood plus 2 feet of sea level rise, and that would also require shoreline armor waterward of the elevated road for that to be fully functional and be resilient to both the water levels and to waves. So that's what you're seeing here, this green and yellow hatching waterward of the elevated road shown in orange.
How elevated?
Roughly 3 feet.
The elevation of the road?
Yeah, 3 feet higher than it is today. Yes.
And where does the water go then?
Well, that's a really good question. I mean, ideally, it stays waterward of this elevated structure that's kind of more like a levee or a dike. But when the water comes into the lagoon, it kind of will get stuck there. It won't drain as quickly because of that levee function.
Just because keep in mind that lagoon is draining everything on that side of the island all the way up to Hum Lake.
Oh,
Yeah.
So this is just kind of a profile view of that elevated road. So you have both the elevation, the added elevation, as well as the shoreline armor waterward of it.
So what are the impacts associated with this strategy? Well, it's a very large cost. It has quite a price to elevate the road and armor it. As I mentioned before, the road can act like a levee, trap the water, preventing it from draining. And it doesn't really mitigate the impacts to the homes associated with flooding from the leeward side of the lagoon. And septics would still require elevation and relocation, as well as some of the homes, particularly along the spit. Yes?
Has anyone done what we used to call in construction a swag as to what, just a remote idea on what this would cost to do the mitigation, the remediation, any ballpark numbers?
Ballpark numbers actually, that are on the sheets that are in the other room. But
Thanks.
But take those with a grain of salt because, depending on what you do, we did think about the amount of fill, the linear foot of the road, the mitigation that's required, and all the things that you have to take into account.
And typically cost estimates are associated with engineered designs that are at a much higher level of detail. These are concepts to kind of like help to have a discussion.
Yeah, so you don't.
So they're going to be, yeah, no,
But yeah, exactly. That's my other way.
have 5%.
Yeah. So with these,
It's good to know.
I think it's really important to just kind of finish this up and then I'll take some more questions, but the impacts to the habitats associated with the armor are something to speak to that I haven't mentioned yet. The loss of intertidal beach as it's squeezed between the shoreline armor is definitely a compromise that would potentially squeeze intertidal forage fish spawning habitats. And there would be a decrease or narrowing of the beach waterward of the armor over time. It also kind of prevents that overwash process that naturally builds up the beach over time. So the next strategy is to realign and restore the road, which the area that's shown with kind of that gold cross hatching is building up the berm in elevation using beach nourishment. So kind of adding additional elevation to provide some flood protection and some wave attenuation functions. The road would be removed from that most vulnerable waterbird extent of Port Stanley Road. Oh, there we go. So this area here. Sorry, the smells is a little hard to control, obviously. I haven't been drinking. But that black and red line there, that is the area where the road could potentially be removed with additional kind of connections provided up here, just limited amounts of elevated road here. So this area still remained functional and those communities wouldn't be islanded or just kind of like flooded and stuck there. We still have ways to get out.
What's the dotted line?
The white dotted line here is just kind of an optional, this area here, an optional connection, I guess, to kind of like facilitate access on both sides. So that's an optional kind of road connection.
It's an easement, I know that it'll help if that's an easement across.
Yeah.
Does your county have plot plan there?
No, some of that is actually, I believe it's the land, not the land bank, but the conservation trust.
Yeah, that's the Alps Road.
Yeah, it's pretty, that hash line is really when the body, obviously. A spanning bridge, so I've talked with the county engineer about this before coming to this meeting. He's like, oh yeah, that's gonna be a doozy. So we probably underestimated yeah, so I mean,
A green belt could come in to the dotted line, and then those thin green belt that parallels it. Those are your drainages all the way up to Humboldt Lake.
Yeah.
And so you would need a significant bridge in there, so water be flow under.
Okay.
So that's tough to do, so, just add a 0 to whatever number you give.
Full disclosure, the county engineer did not want me quoted on any of his. It wasn't an easy conversation they had earlier, did it? Yeah. Yeah, take them with a bucket of stuff.
So, the tide gate would also be, removed to allow, restored flushing within the lagoon. And, this is what this strategy looks like in profile. So the road, the impacts to the road, well, the road and the fill would be removed. There would be revised access. Impacts to homes include, like, some homes would need to be relocated. Other homes would need to be elevated, and obviously there would be revised access to the homes. And then the impacts to septic tanks and persist. There's several impacts or positive impacts to habitat. Freshwater wetlands are likely to become more marine. There would be restored fish access into the lagoon. The forage fish or the intertidal would be sustained, as would sediment transport processes. There would be general increase in the surrounding wetland areas, which could provide some flood water storage and better water quality and carbon sequestration values, and which could be considered a public amenity, that both the beach as well as the road being still accessible for recreation.
All right. We're done talking at you for a bit. Now we get to do the interactive portion of the evening. So we are going to release you in a couple minutes to go into that room for the gallery walk. And I want to just give us some instructions for that before we do that. So we have 4 stations set up. When you first walk in, there'll be a table on the right. We have a sign-in sheet there, so it'd be great if you could just write your name, sign in. We have a fact sheet, so each of you should pick one of these up. It gives you an overview of a lot of the things we talked about, the strategies. We have 6 different values that can help guide adaptation decisions. So and discusses those. We look at how each of those values aligns with the different strategies. And then this table here gives some information about the cost estimate, again, with the bucket of salt. What's included in that cost estimate, what's not included in that cost estimate, and what are some of the restoration benefits. And the QR code on the bottom there takes you to the county website. That will be a good spot for more information. So there's that station, and then we have 3 other stations, 1 for each of the different strategies. And we have county staff who will be standing, the engineer will be standing at each of those. And so you'll have about maybe 8 minutes or so at each of those stations to be able to ask questions, look at the map close up, get more information. We want it to be interactive. We're going to ask you to vote with dots, with stickers for different things. We have Post-it notes. We want you to write feedback, ask questions. So this is really a good opportunity to provide input, and we will use that to then come back and have a full group discussion after that.
And please feel free to comment on elements that you like, and elements that you don't like. Because as we said, we're trying to represent the full spectrum, the different directions that one could take in adapting to climate change. So there are things that you like, highlight those, things that you don't like, highlight those.
Yes.
So things you know about the site or other sites. So, hey, about this, go ahead and write it down, because we're not claiming any, there's no one solution here, and we're open to thinking through all of these different ideas.
And in all reality, like the solution that works for the community will be a combination of these different elements that you're seeing. It won't be any one of them.
Yeah, so the first station will ask you to think about values. So just wanted to prompt that. We have 6 values: access and connectivity, environmental and habitat health, cultural and community heritage, cost and feasibility, resilience and longevity, natural character and aesthetics. So we'll ask you to think about your values and reflect on those. We'll also ask you about what do you like or dislike about each option and what questions you might still have. So really good opportunity to provide a bunch of feedback for that. Yes.
Just wanted to mention that, dot voting tends, by human nature, we tend to go where most of the dots already are. So be mindful of that tendency when you're choosing.
Yes. Try to not be biased by the other ones. Okay, well, yeah, next last question. Yeah.
Who's Herrera?
Oh, Ms. Ferrer, we did not introduce ourselves. Yeah.
I left it to you too.
We forgot in that moment. Yeah, so Andrew and I both work for Herrera. We're a science, engineering, and design company in Seattle, Bellingham, and some other areas throughout Puget Sound. We do a lot of work with communities around sea level rise, adaptation, climate planning, stormwater restoration. So we've been working with the county. Yeah, I'm a water resources engineer. Andrew is a coastal geomorphologist. All right, maybe facilitators, you want to go to your station quick, get a quick.
And you divide up amongst yourselves, don't all road, yeah, one station.
So we'll have to go up to think. Yeah, we'll have to go up to start at the first station, and then after that, it's choose your own adventure among the no management, the protect the road, and the restoration. But we ask that you visit each of them. Just doesn't matter which order you go in them. Visit the first station first, and then you can go to any of them for free. And Tyler will help give a cue of when it might make sense to switch stations.
Where's the none of the above station?
Actually, please go through the store. Okay.
We need something more about the local management. Big process.
Yeah. Wise.
That's a story.
So maybe this works now. Okay. Can folks hear me? I'm trying to get the audio set up so that it's not too garbled. Thanks for your patience. Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. Hi, virtual attendees. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Tina, Steve, for your patience. Appreciate that. We have a virtual version of this activity because we want all of your feedback as well. So I am going to make sure that I can share this here. So just a second. Okay. I'm going to drop this in the chat here. So what I'm going to invite you to do is go to this Google slide here. You should be able to go this. Hopefully you can see this on my screen. And we're going to step through the same activities that the in-person folks are doing and give opportunities for you all to provide feedback here as well. So just check in that folks can do that, can see that. All right, I see people slowly joining. Excellent. I'm going to start walking us through this. So we'll have about 40 minutes, maybe a little bit less. We'll spend about 5 minutes on the first and the last station, and then about probably more like 7 minutes on each of the strategies. This is an opportunity for you all to ask questions and also provide feedback. We have a couple different interactive slides where we're going to ask for your feedback for that. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. So if you're on a phone, I encourage you to join on a laptop or a desktop if you're able to. It's going to be a little bit easier for this. Your feedback for this will be anonymous, but invite you to continue typing in the chat if you've got feedback or questions for that. And since this is a Google slide here, if you're not familiar with this, there is a Zoom button here in the upper right. And so this is something that you can use to kind of zoom in when we're showing maps or other things to be able to see that a bit better. So you'll want to open this in another tab on your computer, the link I shared, so that you're able to interact. Okay, all the people who are in person got a fact sheet here specific for Port Stanley Road. And so I have added a virtual version of that here on the slide. So again, you can use the Zoom buttons to be able to zoom in and get more information on that. So hopefully y'all are able to see that. I see more people are joining the Google slide. I'll drop that in the chat again in case we have some new folks who are joining us. All right. So want to start with kind of a discussion around values that are guiding thoughts around adaptation. So if you are joining on the Google slide right now, I encourage you to go to slide 7 here, which is asking about. So, adapting to sea level rise and erosion is going to involve choices and trade-offs. And we really want you to reflect on and share which values are really important to you when planning for county coastal roads. So we have 6 values here. The first is access and connectivity. So maintaining reliable routes for residents, visitors, and emergency services. Environmental and habitat health, sustaining nearshore ecosystem processes that support salmon, eelgrass, and wildlife. Cultural and community heritage, so honoring local and tribal connections to place and history and recreation. Cost and feasibility, using public funds wisely for durable, achievable solutions. Resilience and longevity, so designing for the long term. And then natural character and aesthetics, so preserving the island's scenic and natural beauty. Now is the interactive part. Would love for you all to vote. And the way that you can do that is if you are in the Google slide right now, you can click those numbers up that I have above and drag and drop first, second, and third to the values that align with yours. So please go ahead and do that. If you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand or type it in the chat. I'm keeping an eye on that as well. Yeah, and for folks who just joined, I just dropped in the chat, we are using a Google slide right here and thinking about values that guide adaptation decisions. So asking people to reflect on these 6 different values that we have here and select the icons in the upper right and move those values or move those 1, 2, and 3 to the 3 values that feel like they most closely align with your values when you're thinking about planning for county coastal roads with sea level rise and erosion. And if you feel like none of these, if there's a value missing here, I encourage you to go to the following slide, slide 8, where there are these post-it notes here where you can add another value that might not be reflected in slide 7. Like 4 folks are online here. Looks like folks are still voting. Give everyone a little bit more time for that. Any questions coming up from virtual attendees here? Happy to answer any questions you might have. Feel free to raise your hand or type it in the chat. Looks like some of the numbers are getting turned around. Okay. Okay, well, we'll be on this slide for maybe another minute. Feel free to do any other voting you might have if you haven't been able to do that yet. I'll drop that link in the chat one more time, just in case people are missing that. And you're welcome to go back to that slide at any point. I know this is a hard exercise. All of these can be important values, and they are all important for decision making, and it's tough to think about what is most important. And again, if there's something that you think is missing here on those, feel free to add things here to slide 8. I see people have added effectiveness and equity. Those are both really good values and considerations. Yeah, feel free to add in anything else that you think might be missing from the discussion here. Oh, I just saw a hand raised. Charles, did you have a hand raised? Do you want to come off mute? Did you have a question or a comment? And hi, welcome, Ron. We're doing an interactive activity here. I'll drop the link in the chat. So feel free to keep. Oh, your mutes are disabled. I'm sorry about that. Thanks for pointing that out. I don't know if I have the ability to change that. I think this is kind of webinar style. So please use the chat. If you have a question or a comment, please put that in the chat and I'll do my best to answer that. Yeah, right now we're looking at slide 7, reflecting on values guiding adaptation decisions, and the little colored icons in the upper right, you can click and drag and drop and put that in the box that aligns with your kind of first, second, third most important values, realizing that all of them are important and all of them are important for the conversation. And then slide 8 here, opportunity to add any other ones that you think might not be included. All right, wrong chat. I'm just seeing a comment here in the chat about equity. Thank you, Charles, explaining that with regards to equity, homes in the flood zone pay taxes too. Yep, that is correct. And, you know, tough decisions to make with limited resources, kind of where those resources get allocated. Okay, I think for the sake of time, I'm going to move us on to another one, but feel free, you've got the link. Come back to slides 7 and 8 if you've got other things you want to add. Now I want to jump into the different strategies here. So the first one here, again, if you're in the slide deck, you're welcome to kind of click around and look at these. You can use this zoom button here in the upper right to be able to zoom in and look at some of these maps more closely. But first one here, we have this no management strategy. So this map here is showing the buildings and areas that are impacted under different sea level rise scenarios with different storms, storm recurrences attached to them, as well as coastal erosion that's shown in the orange and the green. And then the FEMA floodplain is the hatched area, and that's the 1% annual chance, which is sometimes also called the 100-year. When thinking about this strategy, you know, there are trade-offs and benefits that align with each of these values. And so the folks that are in the other room right now have these on a poster. So kind of looking at each of those values and how well each of them align or don't align with the strategy. So can kind of reflect on this. You know, some of them it's a more negative effect, some it's a more moderate effect, some it might be more positive. So encourage you to take a minute and read those, take a look at those. And then once you've done that, what we want to hear from you here with strategy or on slide 12 is then thinking about how well does this strategy, this kind of no management, let nature take its course, you know, allow natural processes to continue without intervention, knowing that at some point parts of the road could be impassable because of flooding and erosion, and then a decision will need to be made down the line. Kind of thinking about how well this option aligns with your values. So you can take one of those orange stickers and then slide that to kind of where on this spectrum. I know sometimes there you go, challenging there. Think about kind of how well this aligns with your values, this strategy. And again, recognizing that any kind of long-term, resilient, durable solution could require a combination of different strategies, either in different locations or over time. All right, and yeah, since I can't hear you, I'll continue to please put in the chat if you've got questions, if you have comments. Really want to make sure that we're able to record your input here. A comment from Charles: no action is an interim strategy, good for a decade or two, not a long-term solution when so many properties are affected. Yep. No management, there is utility to that strategy. However, it is not a viable long-term, viable long-term strategy. Yeah, and you know, if you're looking for a little bit more information here as well, this fact sheet here, which is up on one of the earlier slides, has a nice kind of comparison across the values and the different strategies. And then at the bottom here has costs. So if you want to look again at kind of costs related to each of the strategies, what is included in that cost, what is not included in that cost, you can go back and take a look at that. And so that I'll just show you all again. That is up here on slide 5. So feel free to go back to that, reference that. And a reminder, you can use this zoom button here in the upper right to help make some of that text bigger to be able to see that. So good resource there to go back to. Looks like folks are voting here. This is great to see. Thank you. You know, again, it's a spectrum. We recognize that, so appreciate you adding that. And then, yeah, please spend some time here with slide 13. So what would make this option acceptable or unacceptable to you? So help give us some more input on what you're thinking about why you put your sticker where you did on the spectrum here. You know, what about this aligns with your values? What about this does not align with your values? What questions do you still have? What, you know, what are some of your concerns? Please add those here so that we have those, have a record of what your thinking is on that. Tina, I saw you had a question in the chat there. Are there utilities associated with that road? That's a good question. I am not totally sure off the top of my head. I know that there are septic to those homes there, and that the cost estimates that we included did not include relocation of utilities. Any costs that we see in here don't include that. And yeah, that's a great point as well, that there, even though on this fact sheet, we said that there is kind of no cost associated with the no management strategy, that is not true. There are costs for that. You know, there's the cost of, yeah, properties flooding, impacts to habitat. It's just, those are not county costs. And this is focused on costs to the county for the road. So impacts to utilities, impacts to septic, impacts to houses could all be very, very expensive. Yeah, please continue to use this slide 13 here to add comments and notes. This is super helpful for us. I'll add some too. Okay. I'm gonna give us another 30 seconds or so on this, and then we'll move to the next strategy, looking at protecting the road. If you've got questions, please, yeah, put them in the chat. Just looking at some of the comments here, highlighting this as an interim management approach. Highlighting, yeah, there are costs with utilities and cost to homeowners. Eventually homes might not be feasible in this location, and what's the responsibility of the community to the homeowners? That is a big question. Another comment here, it seems like the road could go eventually since there's access from both sides. Yep, there are definitely some roads in the county that are impacted where that is the only road. This one, there might be some options around. It looks like another comment about purchasing properties and naturalizing the area. Okay, I'm gonna move us on to strategy 2. Just to keep us moving here. So if you're following along, feel free to jump to slide 15 here. This is a picture of the map for that. So, highlighting in areas in orange, those would be areas where, additional fill would be added to the road to build up the base road and bring that elevation of the road up from, I think it's currently about 11 feet to about 13 feet. So that's a lot of material coming in, raising the road for that, and then shoreline armor being added to protect the road. And so that is shown there in yellow and green along the waterward side here. So going to slide 16 here, there's different values again that are associated with this. So please take a minute to look at that. This one, it does maintain access. There are definitely trade-offs for environmental habitat health, loss of habitats, reduced ecological function, some other connections for cultural and community heritage, still a lot of vulnerability for homes and septic. This is expensive. There'd be ongoing maintenance costs, and septic would still be needed to be addressed. This is a strategy that could work for a while. At some point, as water levels are higher, there's a risk that the road would trap water, which could further impact houses and septic. And then, this would be a very engineered shoreline that would have a different look than it does now. So here on slide 17, if you're not here yet, I encourage you to, again, kind of move the sticker. How well does this option align with your values? A lot, somewhat, not at all. And then please also take a look at the next one here. I see people starting to add notes here about what would make this option acceptable or unacceptable to you. So what do you like about this? What do you not like about this? And I'm going to just help us out and move some of these because it seems like we could use a little bit more space here. So I'm going to move some of these just so you got a little more space. And I can add a few more if we need more. So please keep adding in comments here as you've got them. And you're welcome to keep using the chat here as well to add other comments or ask questions, and keeping an eye on that. And again, want to make sure if you all have questions that we're able to help answer those. So if I can't answer them, I'll ask someone else and make sure that we get back to you and may come back together for community discussion. So feel free to put those in the chat if you've got any questions. Awesome. Thanks for adding in these comments. I'm just going to read some of them for folks who might not be able to see these. So, asking about what would make this acceptable or unacceptable. It looks like of the people who responded here, most said that this protect the road strategy does not align very well with values. So it looks like the 4 people who responded, I'll kind of put it on the not at all side there. Some of the comments I'm seeing here, highlighting that this is likely not a long-term solution, talking about this would be a very high cost, since it might need to be removed later. Kind of added concerns, yeah, short-term, high cost to construct, high cost to maintain. And then other concerns about impacts related to that it could trap water from uplands. There was a discussion in this room about how the wetland area collects water from a really large area all the way up to Hummel Lake. So the watershed draining to there is pretty big. This could trap water from upland areas into the areas with homes, causing issues to private property versus the road. That is definitely a concern. Big impacts to natural resources, beach habitat, loss of beach over time for people and for fish. And then the small text here, it says, since there's access from both sides, it does not make sense to spend the money and have the environmental impact for the armoring and road maintenance. Spend the money on helping the homeowners. So thank you all for the feedback on this. These are good considerations. Okay. You're welcome to kind of stay here, keep adding comments to this. This is a great way for us to be able to collect that. Seeing a new comment here about, highlighting the need for funds to help homeowners to raise, realign, relocate. That is an expensive. Oh man, sorry, I just rotated your box. There we go. Sorry about whoever that was. Oh no. Oh man, okay, hopefully that's better. Okay, just got the note that the in-person folks are starting to wrap up. So I'm going to move us on to the last bits here. So this third strategy here, realign and restore. Encourage you to take a look at this map here on 20. For those of you who are in here, you can see areas where the berm would be removed, fill would be removed, the tide channel would be removed. And then the dashed areas mark areas where the road would be either removed or this orange section here where it would be elevated. And this white section of road is an additional optional road realignment. The discussion in this room that was happening earlier was that this area has a lot of water moving through it. And so this might need to be more like a bridge. And so the cost for this is likely underestimated. Again, trade-offs, benefits for this strategy as those align with values. Expensive, it does not include property acquisition, costs to homeowners and septic. Some access maintained, some access lost. There might be interim closures on parts of the road. And then a lot of other benefits for environmental and habitat health with restoration. This is more of a long-term solution as far as kind of creating more space, getting away from the water, maintaining that scenic character. So again, benefits, trade-offs for all of these. I'd encourage, how does this align with your value? Not at all, somewhat, very much. And then take one of those stickers and move that to where it aligns with you. And then after you do that, I encourage you to go to 23 here and provide some more feedback. What would make this option acceptable or unacceptable? Add some notes. Do you have questions? What else are you thinking about related to this? Okay, just looking at some of the comments here. So, saying if this is a good option, if it is truly a multi-benefit project versus either or to address homeowner needs and habitat coastal processes. Another one says, I don't think you need to connect the road. Restoration is fine. Let's see what some of the other ones are here. Most logical approach for managing county resources. However, the homeowner situation is politically complex. Yes, these strategies are all really focused on kind of, county resources with the road, but there's a lot of other impacts and potential costs related to homeowners in the area. And then, yeah, surprised that this has high costs. Yep, this one, costs related to removing the road, restoring the channel, realigning the road, mitigation. And this one, the cost does not include property acquisition, which could be additional costs. Okay, invite folks to continue adding comments here on this one. Thank you very much. And then just with our last couple minutes, want to move to reflecting on all of the strategies here as well. So after you've thought about each of these different ones, management, protect the road, realign and restore, and realizing that it's very each has benefits, trade-offs, and that a combination of strategies will be needed. We'd like you to add a sticker here for the approach or combination of approaches that feel like a best fit. So it's a Venn diagram. There's options to kind of select something that's between two strategies or between three strategies or more towards one or more towards another. So no, this is a bit of a challenging exercise, but invite you to reflect on kind of all of the other material and think about what aligns with your thinking right now. And once you've done that, take a look at slide 26 if you haven't yet, of what other concerns, questions, or ideas do you have? And please add that on a post-it note here. I'm going to step away for a minute to check in with the in-person group, but I'll check in with you all in another minute or so. Feel free to keep adding to this. Okay, hello, virtual attendees. Oh, did we lose some slides here? Huh. Did those get deleted? Interesting.
Oh.
Okay. Okay. All All right, I'm not seeing the last slides here. Maybe somehow those got deleted. I will take a look for that. We're just wrapping up here with in-person, so please keep adding feedback to this. We're going to use some of the feedback you all provided here, try to merge that with the discussion that we have from the folks in person. So thank you all for your time for this and adding comments here. And this link will stay open, so throughout the workshop, questions here. Thanks all. We'll be regrouping with the whole group in about 5 minutes. As we come back together, I'd like to do a little bit recap of news from each station and then turn that into a community discussion, see what some of the bigger themes or remaining questions are that came up for that. We also had about 10 people who were joining us virtually, and so I'm going to kind of summarize some of their feedback as well and integrate that with what we were seeing here. But maybe to start, folks who were at the Susan or Angela, do you want to just add any kind of overall comments on the values?
Yeah, sure. Just kind of listening to people's conversations. The first thought was that the natural character and aesthetics can be a little bit confusing, because I think the thought was
example characteristics I said I should hear about and not naturally is to the environment. We haven't had it long, so I think it was a little bit confusing there, unless you think of it as like a pure aesthetic, this is what I want to see when I drive. There's that, thing.
The thing I noticed was that, like every other survey I've ever been involved in the county, that the preservation of habitats and environmental preservation was a strong
Yeah.
value, which is really consistent with everything else that we found with other types of surveys.
Yeah, it looks like a lot of responses for that one, same thing for resilience and longevity and cost and feasibility. Those look like three very common ones, and that reflects what the virtual group had as well. Also, the values are spread everywhere, you know, it's really hard to choose between different values, all are important, and every single person has kind of a different combination of values that are important to them. Maybe then for the no management, your comment and kind of.
Yeah, sure.
Things related to that?
Yeah, well, we had some very interesting conversations there, I think, because there's a kind of a general thought that no action or no management doesn't really seem like a viable decision because of what is impending in given time. But some interesting conversations arose around, well, practically what would that look like? I mean, if we didn't do anything, practically what are the costs? What are the impacts? Who's going to bear the brunt of that? And in a place like Port Stanley, where the road isn't a main thoroughfare, there's still access from both sides. It's not like somebody, an entire community suddenly gets islanded. That road, if you're thinking about the road itself, no action isn't a gigantic impact. The impact ends up being on the houses right along the shoreline. But then that conversation turned to, well, look at the other possible alternatives. Those folks along the shoreline are going to be impacted no matter what. All the alternatives, no alternative protects those homes completely. And so it's just, yeah, I think that there's a larger discussion to be had about kind of what that looks like for those homeowners, no matter what course of action is taken, and then how important is that road where it currently is.
Yeah, consistent with the online discussion as well, yeah. Okay, then protect the road, yeah, no.
I had protect the road, and I love this line. Expensive delay of the inevitable. So that was the comment that really stuck in my head. So in this scenario, and protected, but of course, this particular site is also challenged by the fact that it has water on the backside. So generally, people were not in favor or only somewhat. Again, recognizing that we might limp along for a while is kind of a temporal thing. We'll kind of wait and see how things go. A lot of our discussion goes around the fact that in all three of these scenarios, elevating homes over time and addressing the septic systems, all three scenarios require that. So just kind of, we had various conversations about that, and folks were able to, we marked where some wells were and different things. So good conversation around this. I look forward to, this project. Actually, we do have a project in the Clean Water Utility CIP, Capital Improvement Program, to have further conversations with the neighborhood here, to see what is going on with your septic systems, what options are. We did get some grant funding. We're working closely with the health department to look at the septic systems around here and try to identify some possible community-based solutions. So that was kind of the brunt of the conversation there. So,
What was that post that you read there?
the post diamond, expensive delay of the inevitable. Was the note, and many of these other are associated with community sewer, maybe, but to what extent and for what duration, it's not a sustainable solution, and then possibly remove the houses makes more long-term sense than road buildup. plus has costs for all parties, but doesn't really solve it. So,
Yeah, so that's consistent with what we heard in the online discussion as well, you know, not a long-term solution, really have like a lot of costs still to homeowners in the area. And still added concerns with water, and flooding to those homes. Okay, strategy 3, Andrea, realign and restore.
Well, there was a lot of comments about additional elements of restoration that could be considered, like restoring the tidal prism by dredging. The fill, like since it was historically a much deeper lagoon system than it is today. There were also comments about a community septic system, as well as the access to the private properties, or to the homes, and there was an idea proposed to have like an ATV barn, so people could access and As they did be like the county has. Yeah. The county could provide a barn for ATV storage. Was what was proposed, yes. And, generally though, what's needed is, more of a long-term vision to relocate the communities that are living, or the community of people that are living on the spit, before restoration could really be considered feasible. There were some concerns about what restoring the road or removing the road would do to the neighboring community on Sorensen Lane and kind of leaving them behind. There was additional discussions about the stream channel or the historic drainages and that feed into the lagoon, and kind of the value in taking a more in-depth look at the historical condition of the system. And that's largely it, except for one additional one that generally the vision may be cost prohibitive, considering all of the other needs across the county community for restoration.
Yeah, and similar to the virtual discussion, some other concerns just about managing county resources. What's the county's role for helping out homeowners versus focused on county resources? And kind of what's the precedent that is set for that, for some of these maybe pilot locations? And so, yeah, good option if it is really multi-benefit, that needs to think about both homeowner needs and habitat and cost. Those are some of the discussion points from that. And then maybe the kind of overall reflection one, I guess we can kind of all see that, looks like, you know, many people put dots in places that are in overlap of multiple strategies. The folks who are standing there, any other kind of reflections or comments on that one?
I think it's worth noting the one dot at the bottom there.
Yeah.
It's a great soul. I think it's interesting because the context was based more in like search and rescue and just historical knowledge of these types of scenarios, and was just saying that it's least costly and it saves more lives. So that was the behind not doing anything.
Thanks to that brave person. It's nice.
Well, that idea, but reality, a lot for all those reasons. It's cheaper if every house on London, you're just paying full retail. Pie in the sky price, what every person wants for their house and what every realtor wants. Say 5 million a house, I don't know, 2 million. One house will sell recently for 1.2 million or something like that. But just whatever that price is, there are 10 houses and it's $20 million. If they don't do it tomorrow or 5 years from now, but it phases out. There'll be less suffering, less pain. The place will get restored and put a bypass road to Biggs Lane to Doug Phil's place. That's it. But it'll be restored back to its natural pristineness. People will move, they'll miss their nice beach and things like that. the animals will move back in. And, it's a thing you should put up there. It's not quite do nothing. It's being managed because you're bailing out. It's the inevitable, which is what.
Yeah, I think so, you're good, and then you're gonna, yeah, you can live in that, yeah.
I must say, my thinking has changed over the past number of years on this matter, because in 2017, we had an announcement of our beach. And basically what the coastal engineer said, you could try all of these other things, but essentially your best option is probably to move your house. And I was happy with that. Had a second study done a few years later, similar, there's the things we could do to delay the inevitable. And I think option number 2 and option number 3 are merely steps to delay what is inevitable. Because maybe the efforts to slow down climate change will slow down the sea rise, but probably not. So no management, and to your point, sir, no management may mean no government management in the sense of not doing anything. It may mean that individuals or communities have to do things. I may have to move my house. It'd be nice to get some help to do that, but I don't know what the options are going to be. I don't know how soon that will happen. So I think no management actually, I find a little more attractive, and I'd like to change my clothes if I may.
I just propose there might be strategy number 4, which is, to your point, really realistically, in the long run, this area is very vulnerable, as are many of these other areas you're studying. So why not look at what would it take to help people make a move? What role would the county play? What would private industry, what would FEMA, what would anybody be able to do? What would Congress do if we had
Adaptation.
adaptation in a different strategy than any of those? It's related, but not. So I think the 4th one is needed.
I'm that's what I sort of say. But I think there's a way to make that happen. So we add something to strategy 4, which I mentioned earlier, is we could have something like a land bank where we have a plan for acquiring places to relocate to. And it's just a level better. Would we accumulate the parcels at a pace that matches the need to retreat? You know, that it's in order to figure out what the funding and availability requirements are. But a plan in that regard, I think, is better.
And yeah, so your hand and then, yeah, the rest.
I will let my fellow constituents here, please go ahead.
Yeah, and septic, dealing with septic and all that as well. Yeah, besides relocation and adaptation.
So sort of plan.
Yeah.
Right, right, exactly.
So what I was gonna ask Kendra to speak to a little bit, that is a concept I've heard since I've joined council 3 years ago, is managed retreat, right? And Representative Larson has wanted to know what the county's plans are with respect to managed retreat. And as a council member, I'm interested to know what our plans are with regard to managed retreat, and what we mean by that. But this is an interesting discussion in terms of asking questions about what could that look like. I had a seatmate who stepped down last year, who was, and Kendra will recall, she was very passionate about the environment and about resilience and all the rest of it. She was very much for no management where a road is going to be falling into the drink, as Kendra says. And she was like, no, forget, just abandon the road. And my other seatmate and I were like, what? Like, really? But the fact of the matter is that may very well be the scenario we're gonna have to look at. I like the concept though of planning for what we're gonna do. Isn't that awful, right? Imagine that. Because there are gonna be some circumstances, and in the case of Shaw, Blind Bay Road is their primary access to the ferry. You know, it'll be a very interesting discussion tomorrow about, and we were talking about this, you and I, and Colin Hunter, our public works director, just a week or two ago. In the interim, the county's gonna have to pay for some, shoring up of that road, no pun intended, but some Band-Aids, for that road, because we don't yet have a longer term strategy. That is a far and away different scenario than Port Stanley. And so there is gonna be all manner of criteria that we're gonna have to be looking at this through. So I do very much appreciate the discussion right now, though, about what does managed retreat mean for this community? Yeah.
This, the start of these conversations and making people aware of what's coming.
Yeah.
So that you can make informed decisions about your own property. You can ask us what the county might be able to do. We can research that. We may not be able to do anything. Just ask Jane, like, how do budget conversations go today?
No, the budget conversation is very bad. Town hall on Thursday, I'll tell you.
No, I mean, times are tough, right?
Times are very tough.
Times are really tough, and, but we want people to have information so they can make informed decisions. And when opportunities arise, if you've done the proper planning, you know, if an opportunity presents itself, 5-6 years from now, that they're doing a major buyout program, then we know who wants out. And we can offer them a fair price and get a grant and make that happen, great. The idea is that we're trying to give people options and awareness about this, so we're not in crisis mode all the time.
Yeah, things like green, purple, brown.
Yeah. It's fine.
Okay. It's brown, purple.
Somebody made just recently reference to the road degrading, and it occurred to me that I had not heard any of us necessarily out loud say, we have a responsibility to protect the environment around the degradation of the roads. So that when we say no management, I still think that can't be, overlooked.
Yeah.
That's the common responsibility.
The hard one to name, no management is the best one.
It's a really good name.
Yeah, it's not a name. Sorry, brown and purple and.
Yeah, I was curious about that as well, the environmental impact of roads degrading into the environment. But I guess Blind Bay, Jane, that's what I was kind of getting at, like, that's a critical pathway for all of Shaw. To access the ferry. For this, the more I look at this and have this discussion, I realize that the double dead end just isn't really a huge issue. I'm kind of curious, like, from Alan and, Bill, you guys, like, from my perspective, I really solely take that route to the ferry and what have you, just because it's more aesthetic, It's faster to go the other way, or into the village, or what have you. Is there really a major impact, aside from losing the homes on the beach, to it being a dead end? So I guess that's the question.
Well, until 1952 it was. It was connected.
52.
That's interesting.
That was a gravel road in most of the 50s.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Things like.
Yeah, so on your point, I don't think on Lopez, there's a single stretch of road that is conventional pavement. The term now as popular as chip seal, we used to call it cabin. So there's a lot of oils and tars deep in those grades that probably you want to remove.
Very much.
What was the technical term for the road? Gypsy.
You call me McCallum Road because that was the name of the Scotsman that invented it, but I think everybody calls it gypsy lane.
Yeah.
So there is an impact.
Yeah.
Yeah, so do nothing, so the no management really is not, it's a little uglier than
Yeah,
realigning the store.
you don't want an oily tar stream dumping into the water.
So it might be the chip seal at some point degrades and needs to come up and maybe it is gravel through that section and it gets signed a certain way and, you know, they go through and grade it, you know, at the beginning of each season and that's what you got.
Kendra, I just wanted to speak to, a very live Lopez example that, you know, we're moving ahead with. That will, that we as a county will be, continuing to communicate to the public about. But, we have a failing road, along Agate Beach, that we're all familiar with. Now, when my seatmate on the prior council said, let's just abandon McKay Harbor Road along that stretch of beach. I'm like, yeah, easy for you to say, you represent Orcas. But joking aside, we've made a determination as a county, that we need to do something about that. We will be moving the road back away from the beach. We hoped we could get federal dollars for that, federal highway dollars. Those are gone. They've been clawed back. We actually had money that federal money that's gone now. So the county is going to be having to pay for that. Kendra knows very well that extensive feasibility over nearly a decade. In dollar terms, went into looking at road relocation. And I won't go into detail here, and maybe it's reflected on the website somewhere, but I mean, there were so many massive challenges to road relocation, not the least of which was property owners not even wanting to contemplate it, still not wanting to contemplate it. And me, Tyler, Kendra, I don't remember who else was here a year or two ago to talk about that scenario with the community. Since then, yes, we've decided we're gonna go ahead and move the road back. And we want to do whatever minimal armoring we have to that's as environmentally sensitive as we can. This is a fix that will last us, Kendra, we don't know, what, 10, 15, 20, 25 years, we don't know. But that is a decision we've taken because of the access of that road to Iceberg, because the residents who live there full time on the other stretch of that road, leading into Iceberg area. And so this is a temporary fix, and we're gonna spend, Kendra, what, help me, 4 million anyway, so from our roads fund on that.
Yeah.
And, yeah, so we're encumbered now with the full cost of that because of the decision of the current administration to call that grant money. But Kendra, tell me, maybe speak a teeny bit more to what we're gonna try and do to thread the needle on that situation, both in terms of not harming the coastline from environmental terms as best as we can manage, but it's still enabling access to the reality.
Yeah, and I haven't seen the latest version, but you know, I think just to back up a little bit, the key aspect of that, and you know, that applies to all conversations with people about private property ownership. One of the biggest challenges facing the county regarding road relocation is obviously needing new right of way. And if people don't come forward with a willingness, I mean, the county is required to pay you for the value of that new road right of way. But if there is resistance to creating that connectivity, our options are condemnation and millions of dollars and years of lawsuit, and maybe or maybe not, we might get that. And it creates a really bad dynamic. And so, you know, we're hoping through these community conversations that folks can come together. We'll have this conversation on Shaw tomorrow, is that we need people to volunteer and recognize as a community benefit that, the road right of way might have to move to a new location. You'll be compensated, it will get moved, there might be a new community amenity because a trail is left behind where the old roadbed might be. So those are the sorts of things that we're gonna really have to take stock of throughout the islands, because there's multiple places where this is happening, and we can't afford to fight with people over access of where a new road is gonna go. And that is the fundamental crux in the issue. We have a backdoor solution to that road realignment. We can't do it because the property owner is resistant. And so we're gonna take maybe a less than optimal route that still doesn't solve for, the broader McKay, in front of the rest of McKay Road there. We bring that road to that, but then we have other challenges on some other sections of the road, but that's all we can do to help alleviate for a time being the risk and the access for, I think it's 17 homes there. So I think that's a very interesting policy question that, we're just gonna have to continue to work through. And yeah, in the case of Agate, we'll do what we can to accommodate. There's a big bluff there that is really starting to move now. So.
Yeah, it's an interesting scenario that Port Stanley folks here, share with McKay Harbor. The actual McKay Harbor area is inundation of those properties there and their septics there, and that is
Same scenario.
same scenario.
Yep.
And Barlow Bay is the road along Barlow Bay, so you let it go.
Yeah, so there's no easy answers to any of this. We're trying to navigate it as best we can, but, I think really having these community conversations and having people who are, willing to work with us to get to a good answer. It requires a level of generosity in some ways that, even though they'll be compensating, it's like, we know that it's impactful to move a road onto your property. Like, I can't imagine anybody wanting to have that happen, but, we're hemmed in now. Everybody owns what they own. And so finding a way to do that is going to be tricky.
What has changed legally since the 1950s? Right-of-way access happened routinely.
Yeah, there's a lot that's changed, and the basic principles are still the same of, we need this for public access and, where we'll do easement negotiation with you, and pay you fair market value for that easement and that property. But, the legal system can end up tying you up, for a good long time. So you have that dynamic, and also, it's challenging for counselors. They have to agree to condemn, and that is very difficult for any elected official to do. When it happens at a federal or state level, you're pretty removed, right? You're as a whether you're washed or whatever, like, you're pretty removed. Jane's here every day, all the time. And to have that decision have to lie at the county level, when it's a county road, it creates a really awkward position, both for staff and for electeds to pursue that. So it's a bit more tricky at the local level. You live on an island, you could get voted off. So you gotta consider all those factors. So
Thank you.
yeah.
We've got about 5 minutes left, so maybe last one, so we have.
I haven't thought this through sufficiently, and I probably shouldn't bring it up. One, I appreciate the county has turned this into a democratic process. And whether our 16 days makes But one of the big stumbling blocks in the future is gonna be the cost of raising taxes, and we're talking about millions and millions of dollars. We need another excise tax on real estate sales, 1% going into a kitty to fund these solutions. We need another source of revenue. And the nice thing about the real estate tax now is that it's a tax on people who don't live here and they're moving here.
Yeah.
So they don't even get to vote on it. But we do. So.
These are democracy.
That's always a good plan.
No, but it's something to consider.
It's an important consideration, and we are looking at all sorts of different revenue models, that could be used for this, beyond grants, because again, this is, it's not one-off projects. These are happening all over the place, and so what is gonna be the long-term, thoughtful strategy to get where we need to go, and
I'd like to second this comment. Thank you for your efforts and approach.
yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Yeah, we do. Well, yeah, just a couple other random things. Thank you all for your time. Thank you for spending the evening with us. Other resources, that QR code on your fact sheet takes you to the county website, which I believe will be a place that more information will be continuing to be posted about conversations related to this. We have extras, I believe, so if you've got a neighbor or a friend who wasn't here but wants to be part of the conversation, give it to them. I think, this conversation is gonna be better the more people are involved. That's not working, but, so thank you for your time. That's a great way to continue to stay involved. And then the King Tides are, this week, so the weekend, so, be paying attention to that and bring that into the conversation.
And the MyCoast app.
Yeah.
If you don't have the MyCoast app, download take photos of where you see King Tide. If you come down the road, we'd love to get those.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's MyCoast.law, and you can it'll geolocate where you're taking the photo from, and then it'll kind of be documented how high the water was at that location.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, please.
And I just want to say thank you to both of our consultants who have, they're dedicated here for a few days, and we traveled some distance, so I really appreciate you being here, facilitating the session, and also, our county staff. I mean, they're traveling. All of these workshops, it can be important for us to be taking serious thought about. So thanks everyone for joining us.
All right.
Thank you all.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're able to help with chairs, we have a 45 period.